All right, today we're diving into the incredibly complex and just devastating conflict in Sudan. We're going to be looking at an analysis that frames it in a really unique way, not just as a civil war, but as this chaotic, multi-layered geopolitical, well, circus. And right off the bat, the source hits us with this powerful image. It paints this picture of calculated chaos where you can't really tell where the local fighting ends and the international meddling begins. The point is, this isn't just a war. It's being presented as a kind of twisted performance, and one with a truly horrifying cost. And that cost? It's just staggering. To bring this all down to earth, the analysis estimates that the death toll has already blown past 150,000 people. Then you've got the people forced to flee. A mind-boggling 12 million people have been driven from their homes. The source describes their situation as something out of a Mad Max fever dream. And on top of all that, you have a looming famine that's threatening 33 million people. You put these numbers together, and it just gives you a sense of the sheer scale of the humanitarian catastrophe we're talking about here. So, who are the main performers in this circus? Well, at the heart of it all, you have two rival military factions. Each one has its own backstory, its own goals, and crucially, its own powerful friends. Okay, so here's the breakdown. On one side, you have the Sudanese Armed Forces, the SAF, led by General al-Burhan. The source calls them the legitimate thugs in uniform, and they're getting support from countries like Egypt and Pakistan. Then, on the other side, you've got the Rapid Support Forces, or RSF, led by a guy named Hemedti. Now, these guys actually grew out of the infamous Janjaweed militia. They're reportedly heavily funded by the UAE, and they are fighting for control over Sudan's resources, especially its gold. But here's the thing. This is not a simple two-sided fight, not even close. The analysis argues that it's become a global proxy war, with a whole bunch of international players pulling strings from just off stage. And it is a tangled web. You've got Egypt backing the SAF because it wants to protect its access to the Nile River. Russia is apparently playing both sides to get its hands on smuggled gold. And then Pakistan jumps into the mix with a huge arms deal for the SAF. All while the US is kind of on the sidelines trying to talk about democracy. But according to this analysis, one country stands out from all the rest. Yeah, the analysis does not mince words here. It flat out calls the UAE the puppet master supreme. It claims the UAE isn't just giving the RSF money, it's supplying them with high-tech weapons, drones, and even mercenaries, basically turning an internal power grab into what the source calls an invasion light. So how does that invasion light actually work? Well, the source breaks down this whole process it calls the globalization of gore. Apparently, it's a mercenary pipeline funded by the UAE. Step 1, retired soldiers are recruited over in Colombia. Step 2, they're staged and trained at a base in Somalia. And Step 3, they're deployed to Darfur to fight for the RSF. It really has become a globalized war. You know, when you have all these different players and all these conflicting motives, you start to see some deep contradictions, some really absurd hypocrisies. And according to the source, that's what truly defines this entire conflict. And that leads us to the first big paradox of this whole situation. How is it possible for a country to publicly push for peace while, privately fueling the war? The analysis points its finger directly at the UAE again. It highlights this incredible irony. The UAE is one of the top humanitarian donors to Sudan, while at the same time, it's allegedly the RSF's #1 weapons supplier. The source has a cynical name for this strategy: aid as alibi. Or, to put it even more bluntly, sorry for the genocide, here's a check. And the ironies just keep coming. The analysis then turns its attention to the Western powers and kind of asks, what exactly is their strategy for bringing civilian rule back to Sudan? And its assessment is, well, it's pretty scathing. It argues that the approach from the US and the EU, which is mainly to negotiate with the very same generals who caused the coup and started this war, is just completely broken. The source's take on it, it's like asking wolves for vegan recipes. It basically says this approach just legitimizes military rule while only paying lip service to democracy. So to try and capture all of this complexity, the analysis actually coins its own term, a fractal fiasco. The idea here is that the chaos isn't just random. It's a pattern of self-interest and conflict that just repeats itself at every single level. From local tribal fights in Darfur to regional power plays all the way up to the global chess match between major powers.
So this brings us to the ultimate question. In a conflict this layered, with so many different actors pulling in so many different directions, what could an endgame possibly even look like?
When you really boil it all down, the key drivers become pretty clear. This isn't just one thing. It's an internal power struggle between generals, and it's supercharged by a lust for Sudan's gold. It's being exploited by foreign powers using the country as a strategic chessboard, and it's all made so much deadlier by this modern globalized mercenary industry.
And so, this explainer ends right where the analysis concludes, not with a neat answer, but with one last, really provocative question. In this geopolitical circus of calculated chaos, with so many puppeteers pulling so many strings, is there anyone actually in control? Or is the whole performance just spiraled into a fiasco with no ringmaster at all?